Hi guys, Scott here from TEPIS Paranormal and welcome back to a brand new video. So today we've got something different to previous videos. Today we're going to be looking at a tier list that I've put together of 22 different paranormal shows. Now this list's taken several months to put together, and over the last few months I've been watching various shows from this list over on my Twitch channel. I've had a lot of feedback from viewers and we've had discussions about the various natures of the shows, what we think of the hosts and generally how we think they present themselves. And from that I've put them into a list ranking from the bottom D tier all the way up to the S tier, which is at the top. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the first entry on this tier list and I'll talk you through my reasoning and I'll tell you what I think of each show, a little bit about it and why it's where it is on the list. Okay, so the first entry on the tier list is, in the very bottom slot in the D tier, we have Ghost Bait. Now, Ghost Bait is a show from the Travel Channel that features investigators Bob McGill and Tina Storer, who both experienced paranormal events at young ages, as they travel the country to help others overcome their fears. The show is based on the premise of Bob McGill's 2011 web series of the same name, and revolves around the investigators first investigating the location, then using their captured evidence to heighten the client's fear, before using them as ghost bait to draw out the negative entity in the environment, and by making them face their fears, they believe that the living can overpower the negative forces around them. This show's in the bottom tier for me because the premise is slightly absurd. In the episodes of the show that I've seen, a similar premise is always followed. They start by investigating, then bring in the homeowner or client, put a burlap sack over their head and send them into a dark, empty room alone to combat their fears and to overpower the entities with no real instruction or guidance on how to do so, other than potentially traumatising the client by putting them through a fearful event. If demons and spirits are legitimate and real, this could be a potentially dangerous activity for the client to do, as they're going into a space with heightened emotion and completely unprotected. The investigations that they conduct during the show are poor, and the research they do within the locations is lacking. The entire show comes across as slightly comical, amateur, and generally just isn't very good. With only a 3 out of 10 on IMDb and almost unanimous negative reviews, I think it's easy to see why this show is the first entry onto the tier list. Next up in the D section, we have Haunted Highway. So Haunted Highway is a 2012 show that began airing on the Sci-Fi Network. The show's main host is Jack Osborne, the son of Ozzy and Sharon, and features Dana Workman as well as 2 of the Fact or Faked Paranormal Files investigators, Jael DePardo and Devin Marble. The show uses a premise that's very common in paranormal media, in that the investigators go to a variety of haunted locations alone, with no camera crews and no producers or directors with them, and that all footage captured is done so by the investigators alone. I've only seen a couple of episodes of this show, but from what I have seen, it's a very sort of entry-level show. There's very little in terms of groundbreaking and new ideas, and based on what I know about 3 of the 4 hosts on the show, this is a downgrade from their previous paranormal work. While it's not necessarily a bad show, it's just very generic and doesn't really interest me in any way, and that's why it's earned its place in the D tier of this tier list. Next up we have Most Haunted. Where do you really start when talking about Most Haunted? It's a British paranormal show, and is arguably one of, if not the most well-known paranormal shows in the UK for the majority of the 2000s. Most Haunted captured viewers' interest in the paranormal during a time period where there wasn't much else available for them to watch, and for that it should be commended. Hosted by Yvette Fielding and featuring a team of different investigators across its 25 seasons, the show's perhaps most known for its controversial use of mediums, specifically its resident medium through seasons 4 to 7, the late Derek Acorah. During his time on the show, Acorah was supposedly possessed at several different locations they visited, and often became confused and sometimes evil. Acorah's medium ability was put to the test by one of the show's producers, Carl Beatty, who had another member of the team feed Acorah false information about 2 fabricated spirits at a location. This led to Acorah presenting information of these spirits as fact, as well as being possessed by one of them. While you have to applaud the show's longevity and the fact that it's still airing today on the Most Haunted YouTube channel, almost 20 years after its original airing, the show's not regarded highly among the paranormal community, mostly due to the actions of Derek Acorah. And although the recent episodes on YouTube are much better in terms of quality than some of the older episodes, this list's considering the show's entire run, meaning that Most Haunted is definitely in the D tier. And bringing us on to the final show in the D tier, we have Paranormal State. Paranormal State was an American series that began in 2007 on the A&E network. The show followed the Pennsylvania State University Paranormal Research Society and follows a group of investigators as they attempt to visit and capture paranormal phenomenon at several haunted locations. Hosted by Ryan Buell, the show features several names who would later go on to appear in better and bigger paranormal shows, two of whom, Katrina Weidman and Chip Coffey, will be mentioned later in this list. Paranormal State featured the team of investigators going into haunted locations to investigate, attempt to capture evidence, and in some cases, try to resolve the location's hauntings. From the episodes I've seen, the show's very amateur, however it makes up for this by having a good team with reasonably good chemistry. While nothing particularly groundbreaking is put forth by the show, it's entertaining enough that it makes the top end of the bottom tier of this list, and must be looked at as the starting point for several young investigators still in university at the time of the show starting. And moving on to the C tier, we start off with Kindred Spirits. Now, Kindred Spirits is a 2016 show which has aired on Destination America, TLC and the Travel Channel. The show features investigators Amy Bruni and Adam Berry, both of whom rose to fame in Ghost Hunters and its associated spin-off series, Ghost Hunters Academy. Much like many good paranormal shows, Kindred Spirits has its own specific idea that it aims to investigate, its own niche, if you will. In this case, it's that the paranormal activity at residences is linked to the families that live there or not. Kindred Spirits is an entertaining, if not slightly by-the-book paranormal show that borrows a little from Ghost Hunters in its format. It's the by-the-book nature of the show that warrants its position on this list, as there's nothing overly interesting shown to make it any higher. In the 4th season, medium Chip Coffey, mentioned previously in Paranormal State, joined the team and has been there ever since. Garnering a respectable 7 out of 10 on IMDb, Kindred Spirits is obviously popular and a well-made series, well produced, and it's clear to see why the show, only in its 5th season, has a lot of potential to become one of the better paranormal shows on television currently, and it is likely that this show will move up the tier list in future iteration. Next up in the C tier, we have Ghost Hunters Academy. This 2009 Sci-Fi Channel show was the 3rd spin-off series based on Ghost Hunters and features 2 members of the TAPS team from Ghost Hunters, Steve Gonsalves and Dave Tango, as they lead a group of new investigators on a variety of ghost hunting cases at locations that have previously been investigated by TAPS. Unlike the other shows on this list, Ghost Hunters Academy served as more of a reality TV game show, with the investigators in training or battling to impress the TAPS members, in hopes to pass from the Academy and onto Ghost Hunters or Ghost Hunters International at their own discretion. The show had a total of 1 season and was won by Adam Berry, who later went on to host Kindred Spirits, the previous entry on this list. Though an interesting concept for a paranormal show, and something vastly different to a lot of others, the show did fall victim to similar issues as the previous entries on this list, in that the investigators lacked experience. While this show can get away with it as that's more of the premise, it does make for a slightly awkward watch, and it's this reason that the show only has a 4.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and why this show is only in the C tier on this list. Now we have another spin-off of Ghost Hunters, Ghost Hunters International. Like the previous show, Ghost Hunters International aired on Sci-Fi and ran from 2008 to 2012. This show shared a very similar style to Ghost Hunters, but where Ghost Hunters mainly investigated locations in the United States, Ghost Hunters International travelled worldwide for their investigations. Featuring a mixture of fresh investigators and some that had moved across from the main Ghost Hunters show, this show had a lot of positive qualities. The investigations were thorough and entertaining, the cast were likeable and had good chemistry, and the show visited a lot of fun locations outside of the United States, something that a lot of shows don't do. While the show is well produced and made, it still just feels like a Ghost Hunters spin-off, which isn't a bad thing in itself, however, adds nothing new to the original premise of the show, except for the change in location and cast. Much like previous shows on this list, its lack of originality is the reason that it's in the upper C tier. Next up, we're moving on to the B tier, which brings us into the first show on this list, Ghost Nation. Unlike the previous 2 entries, Ghost Nation isn't an official Ghost Hunters spin-off, but instead features several of the key members of that show branching out into their own new programme alongside Ghost Hunters. TAPS and Ghost Hunters founding member Jason Hawes and longtime investigators Steve Gonsalves and Dave Tango created the UPRO, or the United Paranormal Research Organisation, a global organisation that helps keep smaller local organisations connected. This show has a very interesting premise in that it sees experienced and famous investigators from TAPS head to smaller paranormal groups to lend a hand on investigations, help resolve issues that they're experiencing, and generally bring smaller groups to the the public's attention. The show, which launched in 2019 on the Travel Channel, has since moved exclusively onto Discovery Plus and has so far been a success, earning a 6 out of 10 on IMDb and seemingly showing no signs of stopping anytime soon. The show's only just beginning to pick up steam, and if Ghost Hunters is anything to go by, the cast involved can make this as much of a popular show on that scale. But for now, as the show is only in its infancy, it makes it into the B tier of this list. However, this will likely change as the show continues to be released. Next up in the B tier, we have the first of several YouTube-based paranormal investigation web series that I'll be featuring on this list. Though not a TV show in the same sense as the other entries, The Paranormal Files features a good amount of editing and well-produced content, which is better than several previous entries, making it worthy of a place on this list. With 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, the channel is presented and ran by Colin Brown and investigates several paranormal phenomena including ghosts, religion, cryptid and extraterrestrial. Launching in 2015 and releasing regular content since, the channel has over 300 videos and over 40 million total views in this 6-year period. With paranormal content seemingly on the rise online, it's likely that the Paranormal Files will continue to grow and change, producing better content in the future. This show earns a place in the B tier of this list. When I previously mentioned that several of the investigators on this list will do a lot better in the future, this is one of the examples I had in mind. Portals to Hell is a 2019 show that airs on the Travel Channel and features the previously mentioned Jack Osborne and Katrina Weidman as they travel to some of the notoriously haunted locations and investigate the dark and sinister histories and paranormal activity reported to take place there. This show has a unique premise as it focuses on locations that are reported to contain a doorway to the spirit world, a gateway to the afterlife, or a portal to hell. Where both presenters' previous entries on this list have been lacking, Portals to Hell makes up for it, redeeming both in my eyes and allowing them to give a solid and well-made paranormal show, with several good investigations throughout its 2 seasons, earning it a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, and a place in the middle of my B tier. Next up in the B tier we have The Ghost Brothers. Ghost Brothers is a paranormal show with a unique perspective on the paranormal world. The show features the Ghost Brothers, a team of best friends led by Dalen Spratt, along with Joanne Mass and Marcus Harvey, as they investigate reportedly haunted locations around the United States. As the show's intro explains, it intends to answer 2 questions. Are ghosts real, and why is everybody white? This is a very valid question amongst paranormal television shows, and as this is the only entry on this tier list to be hosted by African Americans, it fills an obvious gap in the market as a whole. Ghost Brothers takes a much less serious approach to paranormal investigating, with much more comedy and joking between the hosts than on other shows. The show ran for just over a year, producing 2 seasons, 20 episodes, and prompting a spin-off series, Ghost Brothers Haunted House Guests, to be created. The show has a decent IMDb rating of 6.3 out of 10, and its mixture of high-intensity personalities, humour and well-presented investigations earn its place in my tier list. Finally in the B tier we have Destination Fear. As I mentioned in the intro, I watched a lot of the shows on this list for the first time over on my Twitch channel, where I, along with viewers, discussed my thoughts and gave my initial reactions to each. I took these viewer interactions and inputs into account when ranking the shows on this list, and it's fair to say that some shows on this list were more popular than others, and Destination Fear was certainly among the most divisive. Destination Fear began airing in 2019 on the Travel Channel and features Ghost Adventures' own Zach Bagans as one of several producers. The show features former Ghost Adventures cameraman and personality Dakota Leiden as he travels around the United States in an RV along with his team of fellow paranormal enthusiasts, which consists of his sister Chelsea Leiden, his friends Tanner Wiseman and Alex Schroeder. The show has a reasonably interesting concept as it sets out to portray the real-life psychological implications that paranormal hauntings have on each member of the team during their stay at locations. In a premise that several paranormal shows have used, each member of the team sleeps overnight alone in a different area of the haunted location. Again, while controversial among my Twitch viewers, I enjoyed this show, and that's earned it its place on this tier list. While the consensus was that several members of the cast were slightly over the top, their chemistry was good, and the show, which is just entering its 3rd season this month, is an entertaining foray into the paranormal. Next up we move on to the A tier, and to start us off we're going to be looking at Mindseed TV. Mindseed TV is another paranormal investigation YouTube channel, and began as a tech review channel before taking the plunge into paranormal content several years ago. The channel, which was suggested to me by Duty Rhino, features a regular posting of paranormal content, whether reacting to creepy haunted videos online, or doing their own investigations. The content on the channel is very well produced and with good editing and quality, which has garnered the channel 1.3 million subscribers and over 100 million total views as of this video's release. With a very honest, believable and down-to-earth style of investigating, these videos make for a great source of entertainment. There's not a lot more to say about Mindseed TV, however, with the quality of this content continuing to increase with almost every video, it's likely that this channel will continue to grow and that the content will improve exponentially as this happens. Next up in the A tier we have Ghost Asylum. Ghost Asylum is one of the more interesting shows on this list for me, as it's one of the few that I had no prior knowledge of before watching it on stream. First released in 2014 on Destination America and running for 2 years, this show features paranormal group Tennessee Wraith Chasers as they travel around some of the most haunted and abandoned mental asylums and sanitariums in the United States and Canada. As mentioned above, the Ghost Asylum team have a particular niche for these abandoned mental institutions, which makes for a much more eerie feel to the show, and unlike other shows, the Ghost Asylum team try new and innovative methods to communicate with spirits and to try and attempt to catch them at the location. The show had 3 seasons and only ranked a 5.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and I found the presentation as well as their uniqueness within the paranormal television genre to be interesting and to keep my attention peaked throughout, and because of this, the show ranks in the A tier of this list. Next up in the A tier we have Ghost Hunters. We've spoken about the spin-offs and now it's time for the originator. Ghost Hunters is one of the most popular paranormal shows of the past 2 decades. Originally airing in 2004 on Sci-Fi and running for 12 straight years before coming to an end in 2016, and then being rebooted in 2019 on A&E. Initially, the show featured Grant Wilson and Jason Hawes, a pair of plumbers and the founders of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, as they, along with other TAPS members, travelled across America and in some cases the rest of the world, investigating haunted locations. In 2012, Grant Wilson left the show, while Jason and other members of the TAPS team, such as Steve Gonzalez and Dave Tango, continued until its end in 2016. In 2019, the show was rebooted with a new team led by the returning Grant Wilson, however with no notable connection to TAPS. By this point, most of the popular TAPS members had moved on to their own shows, including Ghost Nation and Kindred Spirits. The series is credited with popularising paranormal reality TV as a genre, as it's one of the oldest, most popular and longest running shows, totalling 14 seasons with over 250 episodes. In its original format, pre-reboot, the show was one of my favourites growing up, and its longevity, quality and significance within the genre places it quite high on this list. However, I haven't enjoyed the recently rebooted seasons as the show doesn't feel the same without the TAPS presence, therefore I can't put it any higher than A tier. Following Ghost Hunters, we have The Haunted Collector. Running on Sci-Fi for 3 seasons between 2011 and 2013, The Haunted Collector was an American reality series that followed famed demonologist John Zaffis, a collector of haunted objects who runs a paranormal museum, and the rest of his team, mostly consisting of his family members. The show had a unique premise in that Zaffis went into locations, both commercial and residential, in the hopes of finding trigger object or haunted object at the location that he believed may have been causing the hauntings. He then, with the location owner's permission, removed the objects to his museum where he kept them safely stored. This concept alone is interesting, however it becomes more so when you learn that Zaffis is the nephew of world-renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who themselves had a haunted museum and trained John as a demonologist. Zaffis is a fascinating figure, with both a long professional and family tie to the paranormal, and his presence, along with the very thorough investigations that the team conduct during the show's run, are what put this show in the A tier of this list for me. However, many online reviews critique the show for being slow-paced and boring, which I can also understand, and this is partly why the show hasn't made it into the top tier. And now to round off the A tier, we have arguably the most popular paranormal reality TV show there is, Ghost Adventures. Ghost Adventures was initially a documentary that released in 2007, though was filmed in 2004, and was presented by Zach Bagans, as well as starring his fellow investigator Nick Groff and their cameraman Aaron Goodwin. Ghost Adventures has gone on to become one of the most popular paranormal shows currently on TV, with Bagans himself becoming a celebrity in the paranormal world, and hosting a number of spin-off shows as well as a documentary, The Demon House. The show, which is entering its 21st season at the time of recording, and has had more than 49 special episodes, features Bagans and the rest of his team exploring reportedly haunted locations in their own unique style. The show's main premise, which many have since gone on to replicate, is that there are no big camera crews, nobody behind the scenes, just the hosts locked in a location from dusk until dawn. With Bagans' enthusiasm and energy, Groff's more thoughtful and logical approach and Goodwin's fearful and reserved nature, the show had the perfect blend of all styles, and with paranormal equipment developers on hand to provide the latest in paranormal investigation equipment and technology, the show was always ahead of the curve with its tech. Nick Groff was a part of the show from the documentary up until 2014, when he left after a reported disagreement with Bagans over the show's future direction. At this point, two other members of the team who'd previously only appeared sporadically in recurring roles, Billy Tolley and Jay Wasley, stepped up to become permanent members. The show has a 7.5 out of 10 rating on IMDb, easily one of the highest I've seen while writing this. However, this only makes the upper A tier on this list in my opinion, as the show lost an element of what made it great when Nick left. This is due to the dynamic of the hosts changing in a way that I find much less entertaining, as the show became much more centred on Bagans and not the overall team. The show's still very excellent, and it earns its place at the top of the A tier. However, if this was just rating the first 10 seasons, the show would definitely be in the top tier. I know from speaking to other fans, however, that not all agree with this assessment, as some believe that Groff leaving improved the show, allowing Aaron, who is a much different person in the later seasons to the initial, to step up and fill this role. Whatever way you feel, it's undeniable that Ghost Adventures is or was one of the most iconic paranormal shows and one of the key reasons that paranormal TV itself is a genre. And finally now we move on to the S tier. Starting us off with Deathwalker, after Nick Groff left Ghost Adventures he worked on several different shows, two of which will be mentioned later in this list. The most recent of these shows is Deathwalker, which premiered in 2021 and is currently only available in the UK on Discovery Plus, before coming to the United States later this year. In Deathwalker, Groff investigates a number of hauntings, their origins, and looks at different theories behind the paranormal. After being unable to make the initial release date worldwide, Groff released a sneak peek mini-episode over on his YouTube channel where he investigates a jail in Louisiana, exploring its dark past and pushing the boundaries of what we think we know about the paranormal. I've always enjoyed Nick's presentation and commitment to the paranormal, and this show is no exception to that. The show has an interesting concept, exploring different theories related to death and the afterlife, which is why it's in the S tier for me. Hopefully, as this show continues to grow and releases worldwide, with the second season currently in development, the show, which currently has a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, will keep its current form and justify its place on this list. Next up, we have another Nick Groff-led show, and this time a special season of one of his other big shows, Paranormal Lockdown. Paranormal Lockdown UK features Groff and Katrina Weidman, who I've previously mentioned in other entries on this list, and aired in 2018 for one season, and was more of a special season than a fully fledged spin-off, though Discovery Plus doesn't see it as so. The show followed the Paranormal Lockdown format of the two investigators locking themselves in a haunted location for 72 hours, sleeping within the walls of the location, with only guest investigators or people with connections to the location and their cameraman Rob Safi coming in through the stay. The goal is that by spending time at the location, they experience what it may be like to live there instead of just spending a single night within the location, giving the spirits more time to familiarise themselves and multiple occasions to interact. The show for me has a good concept. The idea of staying at a location longer than just one night, including during several daytimes, which is something that paranormal shows tend to ignore, provides a unique look at the life of a paranormal investigator, and the chemistry between Groff and Weidman is undeniably fun. This show for me is one of the better shows in the paranormal reality category, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed, though not as much as the US version, which I'll mention soon. Next up in the S tier, we have Ghost Lab. This is a show that I didn't expect to like. Going into it, I didn't have high expectations. However, that changed when I actually got around to watching it, and before long, myself and the Twitch chat couldn't get enough of the show. The show, which aired in 2019 and features the Kling brothers, Brad and Barry, as well as the rest of their paranormal investigation group, Everyday Paranormal. The show has a unique niche as the Everyday Paranormal team travel the United States in a mobile command centre that they've labelled the Ghost Lab. The Ghost Lab contains a large number of screens, high-spec computing resources, and allows the team to review all paranormal evidence captured during their investigations in real time, and in a much better suited environment than a lot of other paranormal shows. The show ran for 2 seasons and received a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb. However, during the period in which I was watching the shows, I found myself regularly coming back to this as it was one of the more enjoyable that I found myself watching. This was in part due to the personalities of the Kling brothers and the rest of the team, the scientific style of their investigations, and the results that they captured, several of which were clear and difficult to debunk. The show also made a point of not presenting evidence that was easy to explain as paranormal, and showed various clips of them debunking potential evidence that was explainable. It's these reasons that the show is in the very top tier of paranormal shows in my opinion, and I believe it deserved more seasons than it got, as it's a show that I would strongly recommend to anyone with an interest in the paranormal. For the penultimate entry in the S tier, we have another YouTube web series, BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural, first launching on the BuzzFeed YouTube channel in 2016. The show was produced and written by Ryan Bergara. Initially, the show featured Brent Bennett as co-host for the first several episodes, but he was eventually replaced by Shane Madej. Unsolved was split into two distinct series, BuzzFeed Unsolved True Crime and BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural. The two series were identical in presentation, with the only real difference being the content. Of the cast, Ryan's a firm believer in the paranormal and Shane's a firm skeptic. This dynamic works well as the two play off of each other's beliefs and fears to make for an entertaining but also well presented investigation and series. The focus of the show is often hauntings, demons and cryptids, though other paranormal phenomena such as UFOs and paranormal conspiracies are also covered. Ryan's general rule is that each season can have a maximum of one demon case. After talking about the location for a while, the pair then visit the haunted location and conduct investigations of their own, using a variety of paranormal research equipment to investigate and attempt to capture their own evidence. The pair play well off of each other and provide the viewers with an everyman perspective to the paranormal, with the skeptical Shane provoking and the fearful Ryan pleading with the spirits and demons. The show features a good mixture of comedy and serious elements that makes it enjoyable to watch, and it's grown to become one of the most popular series on YouTube as a whole. In 2021, it was announced that the show would air its 7th and final season, as Ryan and Shane left BuzzFeed to start their own company several years prior. With a 9 out of 10 on IMDb and a very positive reception amongst fans and non-believers alike, it's clear to see why this show is so well regarded, and it completely justifies its position on this list. I also think it's fair to say that this show will be missed going forward. And finally, in the top position of the tier list, and out of the 22 shows I've reviewed, we have my personal favourite, Paranormal Lockdown. I mentioned the UK special season several entries previously, however that version pales in comparison to the original in my opinion. There's not a whole lot to add here that I never covered in the UK version, except that the US version features much more exciting locations, better guest stars and a greater production quality. It's fair to say that while watching the wide range of paranormal shows I did for this list, this was the only one that I could really sit back and enjoy in my free time, and that at no point did it feel like a chore to watch. The friendship between Nick and Katrina was perfect, with the right amount of joking and seriousness to make for an entertaining dynamic. The pair are also wonderful investigators with a long history of shows and a lot of experience between them. As previously mentioned, the show's premise of 72 hours locked in a location, sleeping there and filming the whole time, is a good one that allows for more to be captured than in other shows. And the general feel of the show is very well done. Running from 2016 to 2019, the show features 3 seasons and is just short of 50 episodes, and like several previous entries on this list, I believe it deserved a lot more. And with that, we reach the end of the Paranormal TV show tier list. Are there any shows in positions you disagree with? Are there any shows you think I've missed from the list completely? Let me know your thoughts on the tier list down below, and also let me know if there are any other paranormal tier lists you'd like to see. But with that, I've been Scott from TEPIS Paranormal, and I'll see you in the next video.